What's up, Fins fans? My name is Jim Greasehaber. Call me Grease, and oh my God, that's a bad loss.
I'm Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, and you can't win the game when you rush 14 times for 19 yards.
I'm Jeff Scanina, devastated. The line on both sides of the ball was not good.
Fins up. It's the Dolphin Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphin Squad Show starts now.
Man, oh man, Jim Greasehaber, call me Grease. Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins podcast, and former Dolphin Jeff Scanina, call him Z. And we have a tough one today. Your Miami Dolphins squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making us your first watch or listen. We are on YouTube. We are on every outlet where you can get your audio version: Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, and of course, we are on Roku as well. But no matter where you're watching us or listening to us, today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda, like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Oh, Lord, Mazda, move and be moved. I have to do that spot, trying to find a way to move it forward. But we have a lot to talk about today on this show. And Z, I'm going to start with you, because you were a guy who, for a good portion of your career, played a big role in helping defenses control the line of scrimmage. And today's game, the Dolphins blow a 17-0 lead. They came out on fire, looking great. And here I am getting all ready to go. Leave Mike McDaniel alone. Tua's the man. Here they go. They don't need Tyreek Hill. Unbelievable. But we saw the signs early on. The Carolina Panthers, give them credit, with a big comeback. But the Miami Dolphins up front on the line of scrimmage, gashed completely by the Carolina run game, couldn't run the ball on offense. Tua had no time. They could barely get the ball down the field, and they are outscored, Z, 27-7 from that point forward by the Carolina Panthers. They had 4 drives, 19 plays for 38 yards on offense, and they gave up a 200-yard game to Rico Dowdle on just 21 carries, man, including that late game drive. The Panthers went right down the field after Miami took the lead, gashed them like they weren't even there, and that's a wrap.
Yeah, no, it's discouraging. You know, anytime as a defensive player, especially as a run stopper of myself, and you give up 200 yards on the ground to one guy, you know, it's I don't even know what to say about that. You know, I knew it was going to be an issue for our offensive line with those inside guys, you know, Rashawn and Derek. You know, there's some good, solid players inside. So I knew our run game inside was not going to be good. I thought we had a chance on the edges, though, and we just never really got out there. You know, and their backer play was better than we thought. They were shooting some gaps and making plays because of the 2 big guys inside, you know, taking up blockers, you know, so they had an answer there. On our side of the ball on D-line, we didn't do anything up front. We didn't get off blocks. We kind of stood there and looked at guys run by us. You know, we got to have more urgency getting off blocks and making better tackles.
Kyle, the defense gashed on that final drive. I thought maybe they had them there on that 4th and 5. Bryce Young made big plays, and the Panthers did run the ball. But if I were a Miami Dolphins lineman on either side of the ball, I would be really seriously looking in the mirror, and I would go a little bit lower than my chin and start looking inside my chest and trying to figure out what's in there.
Yeah, it's a shame you don't have a bathroom on the plane for every single player who on the trenches for the flight home to look at themselves in the mirror the entire flight home, because, man, you talk about demoralizing play on both sides of the ball. And you know, Z kind of shouted out the run game and your expected opportunities to get the ball rolling a little bit on the edges. And whether it was their safeties with their 3 safety big nickel stuff, or these linebackers just firing and fitting, running the alley and getting outside and fitting. I thought there were some times maybe we had some opportunities for cutbacks to work back inside, but we were really intent to run it inside. And we felt like we were probing inside, looking for kind of some dirty yards, and no rhythm at all. I mean, you saw the graphic by the end of the game, 230 whatever to 19 for running yards on the ground. It'd have been a miracle if they'd have won the game, to be honest, with the way that those matchups ended up playing out. And I think it's a massive disappointment. And I think my concern for Miami out of this game is felt like we kind of went with some more even front stuff as compared to playing the base defense. They had Cornell Armstrong, who's the third or fourth choice to be the nickel. He had a hamstring issue. It's like you're running out of bodies on the back end to make it fit. And that's part of your front structure is dictated on what you can do on the back end. And I don't think they've got the answers right now. So you're kind of just destined to, hey, these are the guys that we got. We hope they grow up. We hope they figure out how to make these plays in the hole or get off the blocks. And today they did not. And the Dolphins now sit at 1-4 as a result.
Yeah, big penalties laid on Jack Jones. Actually got away with one earlier. They threw the flag, then picked it up, which was unbelievable because it was clearly, when you watch the replay, a hold. They just couldn't do anything in the pass game in the secondary. I thought the DBs did a good job shooting the gaps and making tackles for a while there. In the second half, it looked like the Dolphins defense had figured things out. They go up 17-0, Z, and I just want to do a quick little recap as they go to 1-4. But they come out on fire. I mean, they score on their first 3 drives. The passing game's hitting. Even though they're not running, the passing game's hitting. They force 2 turnovers, and everything's looking great. How does it go so wrong from there? You're up 17-0. And I'm looking at this. What? How many minutes were left in the second quarter? 6 minutes maybe left in the second quarter. You're up 17-0, and then before you know it, it's halftime, and and the Panthers are in the game. I just don't understand how it could fall apart that badly when you're up that big.
Yeah, I know, because you get the 2 turnovers, and you get points off those 2 turnovers. Kind of what we talked about last week. And when if we get turnovers, we have a chance. We won the turnover battle, but we also gave up 200 yards, rushing to a guy. So, balances it out a little bit. It's just like the bottom fell out. Like all of a sudden, boom, it just fell out. Usually that happens after a turnover or a big play by the opposing team. But they just methodically went down the field and got those points. And we just never have an answer. You're hoping for that turnover again. I think we rely on that turnover too much. Because as I was watching the game, and we're missing a lot of tackles, but guys were just going for punching out the ball. They weren't wrapping up and bringing the ball carrier down, securing the tackle, then going for the ball as you're taught fundamental football. They weren't doing that. They were just going for the big splash play of a turnover that has saved us the last, week and a half now, right? Or, 4 quarters and, 6 quarters, right? And then we didn't get the turnovers, and then the bottom fell out.
I wonder, Kyle, how many 200-yard games there are in the NFL this year for a running back. Was that the first? It might have been the first that I've seen. It just shouldn't happen in the National Football League. It rarely happens in college football. This is a high school thing. What's going on out there, man? I know it's easy to sit here and throw shade at people. And look, I mean, everybody's working their butts off. There's no doubt about that. But working your butt off isn't good enough sometimes. It just doesn't work. And you're not going to keep your jobs doing that. Z said on Wednesday, and it might have been Wednesday, might have been after the Jets win, he said everybody in the building except the owner is playing for their jobs, coaching for their jobs every week, and they did not look like they were playing and coaching for their jobs today.
Well, you could kind of feel them probing around some different things, whether they were rotating Jordan Phillips and Kenneth Grant and Matthew Butler, who gets called for the hands to the face, and that and Zach Sealer gets called for a defensive holding. Like they're trying to do anything and everything. You saw more of Benito Jones in this game than you'd seen in the last couple of weeks, and trying to mix and match personnel. But again, like we've kind of talked about, if you're kind of tied structurally and how you can piece together a game plan that you feel good about, it's a combination of I see corners trying to fit in the hole 2 yards from the line of scrimmage, and they're jumping at the ball carrier and not making tackles. I see guys throwing a hand out there and not getting rid of a block, and trying to make a tackle with one arm, and it's just not there. So you're running out of time to sit here and be patient and just say, oh, well, these guys got to get reps, and then it's all going to click together, because you're kind of teetering now on the brink, if you aren't already there, of kind of the attitude around what this season is, sitting at 1-4, and you got the Chargers coming to town next week, or is a team that can be super physical and run at teams. The Browns are the week after that, and Quinshon Judkins, their rookie running back, looks outstanding running the ball. Now they lost to Minnesota this morning when they played overseas, but Cleveland looks like a team that can give you fits running the ball. If the Panthers, with a backup center and a third string right guard and not overly impressive guys on the edges, can give you the kind of fits that Miami was given fits to that degree of today at the line of scrimmage, we're going to have some really difficult conversations throughout the course of the next month of the season.
Yeah, the Dolphins with the field goal, and then obviously the 14 points, the 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. Achane caught a touchdown pass. Waller caught a touchdown pass. He didn't touch the ball. I don't even think he was targeted in the second half, and I know he's on a play restriction and all those sorts of things, but you go 11 plays, 48 yards, almost 6 minutes, kick a field goal. You go 14 plays, 58 yards, over 6 minutes, touchdown. 5 plays, 49 yards, 313, touchdown. It's 17-0. I understand, Z, the defense is undermanned. I don't want to make excuses, but they almost have you and me out there in the secondary right now. And no disrespect to those guys, but that's what it looked like on the field. That it is what it is. I can't sugarcoat it in any way how bad they were in the secondary and how decimated they are back there and on the defensive line. But offensively speaking, I know the defense is going, hey, help us, guys. The offense did not help the defense at all. 19 plays, 38 yards on 4 drives, 3 and outs. They're not moving the ball at all. How do you go? And again, I understood the defense. They wore out. They're undermanned. But how does the offense go from looking so amazing to doing absolutely nothing? I mean, nothing for almost the whole entire rest of the game until they put that late scoring drive together.
That's a great question. I think every Dolphin fan is asking that question right now. I don't know. It just seemed like they just went out there lackadaisical and just assumed that these Panthers were going to go away at 17-0. They just thought that, they're going to think the same old Panthers, they're just going to go away. We're going to be able to walk down the field and have our way with them. And they didn't. This team got a little bit of grit to them, and they came back and they fought. And then it took the Dolphins a while to get clicking and start getting some, momentum in the second half, but it took a while. We just can't have that. We got to, when we have a team down 17-0 and go for the jugular and score more points and keep driving it down their throat. And we didn't do that today. Yeah.
And Kyle, when I think about, and people in the chat are going, oh, their offensive line injuries and the 4th-string guy on Tua's blind side. I don't care. You were up 17-0 with those guys. No excuses.
Yeah. And that goes back to your inability to run the ball. And it kind of felt like you were just, we've asked for 3 weeks. Hey, like to see him run the ball more. We came out of the Monday night game against Jets. Hey, felt really good about. We ran the ball 31 times. They got nothing going on the ground, and it was one of those things where if you're going to play clock control, and then on the other side you're going to play bend don't break and play really soft on defense and let completions happen in front of you and try to rally up and tackle and maybe punch the ball out and get another turnover. You have to be able to possess for some semblance of time the football. And I think that's the thing that stands out to me. After the 3 scoring drives to start the game, 3 plays minus 5 yards for 1 minute and 37 seconds of time of possession, 3 plays 7 yards, 2 minutes and 37 seconds time of possessions, 5 plays for 13 yards, 2 minutes and 32 seconds of time of possessions, 3 plays for 3 yards, 1 minute and 41. These are consecutive possessions that the offense had throughout the course of the middle 2 quarters of the game. 4 plays for 20 yards, 2 minutes and 9 seconds. They didn't have a single drive after they scored their 17th point that lasted 3 minutes time of possession across 35 minutes of game clock across like 2 hours and 10 minutes of like a real-time clock that you couldn't possess the ball for 3 minutes. And you looked up and lo and behold, you're into the 4th quarter. You get the ball back for your second possession of the 4th quarter. You're still up 17-13. So like it goes both ways. Your run defense was horrendous today. But at the same time, you can't go all those plays and then play bend, don't break on defense and get nothing on offense and then not also possess the ball. Because the first drives that they had, they went 11 plays for 6 minutes. They went 14 plays for 6 minutes and 36 seconds. And then they went 5 plays for 49 yards and 3 minutes and 13 after the interception from Minkah Fitzpatrick. So very stark contrast of how they were able to possess the ball early and then appallingly unable to possess the ball while playing from the lead for the vast majority of the game.
Yeah, and they literally spot Carolina 20 points after that 17-0 lead. And then it's like they wake up. Waddle goes deep. They connect on a Tua underthrows the ball because the guy's right in his face as he's throwing it. He had no time all day. I don't know what guys and girls, I don't know what you want Tua to do on some of these plays. I mean, you're asking him to throw the ball deep, and he has to do it literally on a 3-step drop or he's dead. with this offensive line. And that was what happened in the second half. And you could just see the Panthers getting more and more confident. But then, to their credit, and we'll pick this up on the other side, the offense comes to life, retakes the lead, and you're feeling good about things. Then the defense gets gashed. The Panthers come down the field and score easily, but you still have 2 minutes left and you have the ball back with all 3 timeouts. And what happened after that? I mean, Mike McDaniel just switched into his Riddler costume, and none of us have any idea what was going on there. This is Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Grease, it's Kyle, and it's Z. We got an hour-long show, so we got 45 minutes left. So come on in, YouTube, and of course, you're listening wherever you get your audio version and on Roku. But on the YouTube version live, you can come on into the chat. Many of you are in there now, and at least talk to each other. We'll pick through and find some things we can talk about as well. But we have so much more to get into here on the show today. The offensive futility. What in the world, though, were they doing in those last 2 minutes? 1:59 left on the clock. They get the ball with 3 timeouts, and disaster ensued. But not only on the field, on the sideline. This is your Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grease, Kyle, and Z. Take a quick break. We're not going anywhere. Neither are you, but Kyle is going to tell you about our friends at Square.
This Dolphin Squad Show is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that can become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. Take this opportunity to go to one of your favorite local spots and have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood.
There we go. Nice job, Kyle. And here we are back. It's the Squad Show. And I'm going to tell you this. I'm just going to kick this segment off like this, that they get the ball back with 1:59 left. And the Panthers had gone right down the field. You almost knew with the defense, especially Kyle, when Dodson left the game with a concussion and you knew he wasn't coming back, one of those linebackers who were just, they were under the gun all day. Those offensive linemen were on them all game long. And I thought the linebackers were the best part of the defense. And then Dodson's out. The Panthers go down the field, but then the Dolphins get the ball back with 1:59 left. And Kyle, I know you're going to be answering people on this one all week long.
Yep.
I still have no idea what happened there. A couple of incompletions and a sack. They don't use any of their timeouts. And then they punt the ball away when their defense hasn't stopped anybody. They give Carolina the ball back with 59 seconds. They call a little over a minute, and they called their first timeout at 59 seconds. So they don't use any of their timeouts on offense. They kick the ball away with a minute left when they haven't stopped anything. I just don't understand anything at all that happened as of 1:59 left on the clock. Miami gets the ball back.
So obviously, nice play by the defensive back to break up the pass to Waddle from the left slot on first down. Tua's moved off his spot, doesn't have his feet set, sails another in-breaking route that had been kind of the hallmark staple money route of the first 2 years of the offense. 12 to 17 yards downfield between the hashes and the top of the numbers. That's kind of like the honey hole spot. It was right into that space, felt like they had it when they wanted to go to it. And it takes a tip from Waddle to prevent a game-ending interception on the spot right then and there. Then he takes the early sack off the left side from Patrick Jones on third down. That play was snapped with 1 minute and 46 seconds left. They let the clock run all the way down to 1:10 before they snapped it to punt the ball back to Carolina, who had rushed for 235 yards against you in the game. So there's all these different analytics tools that are out there, right? And I pull one of them up. And I know it's the fourth down decision calculator, where you put your team, the opposing team, the field position, the time on the clock, what the score is, how many timeouts everybody has. And that fourth down decision calculator said you had a 2% better win percentage chance if you punted the ball back to Carolina. But that doesn't take into account what Carolina had done to you on offense, right? And
you said 2%?
It's a 2% better outcome to punt in a vacuum, which I don't agree with that, but I guess I get it. But to run 36 seconds off the clock and then punt back to give them the ball with the lead, with needing to 3, I would have rather gone for it on 4th down and said, hey, if we don't get it, we don't run as much time off the clock. We could still stop and force a kick, get the ball back, and then we can still win the game with a touchdown if they just kick a field goal and we prevent them from scoring a touchdown. So within the context of what Carolina had done to you for 3 quarters offensively, I think it's an indefensible decision personally to give the ball back to Carolina with 1 minute and 10 seconds on a running clock, to run the punt team out there and give them back and say, hey, we'll force a punt and then we'll get the ball back with presumably 50 seconds left if you go 3 and out and take your 3 timeouts, and then they're punting back to you and you're going to be, instead of 4th and 17 from your own 15, you'll have 1st and 10, but maybe you'll be at your own 25, 30-yard line with half the amount of time on the clock. That doesn't add up to me when you consider what Carolina did to you offensively. And that's before you get into what was the 8th penalty that the Dolphins defense incurred in the second half of the game. I think they went to halftime with 1 penalty for 5 yards. They finished with 9 penalties for 64 yards.
Yeah.
And a lot of it on
in the 3rd quarter. Yeah.
Extra contact there in coverage. And that's a brutal sequence to end the game. And that's, I think, really frustrating because it's the kind of, what kind of confidence are you giving your offense, right? What kind of confidence are you giving your defense? And then how are they paying that off? You're kind of spitting the pinball or the ping pong ball back at each other, waiting for somebody make a play, and nobody made a play. It's brutal.
Z, how does that work? Is that all the head coach? Who's in his ear at that point? Is there anybody like game control, clock quality control helping him out there, or is that all Mike?
I mean, Mike's got the final say because he's the head coach, but there is a guy in his ear, who does game management. He's got the binder with all the analytics of what to do and what not to do, and some coaches believe a lot in it and some don't, but again, it's up to Mike, and Mike's got to make that call,
Yeah, and so obviously that's rough, and what had happened to the defense. So I know the offense struggled on those 3 plays, and Waddle did save Tua from a pick, and that he was open on that play. But again, pressure right into his face, and you can't blame that as an NFL quarterback. You got to make that throw, right? And Tua has made that throw plenty of times. He looked great at times in this game, but as a defensive player, and you're looking at the offense right there, and you're thinking maybe your best chance is the offense, and you're getting gashed like that. How's that feel when the coach says, no, D, you're going back out with 1 minute left and you better stop them on 3 plays?
Well, if you have any pride in your soul, you like that. You like when the coach puts you out there to win the game or give your team a chance to win the game. You should have some pride in that, So as a defensive player, I always loved it. We go out there, it's do or die on us. It's us, to stop them or, cost us, But that's what, as a player, you want that on your back. Any great quarterback wants to go out there for the 2-minute drive, and to win it all.
Yeah, no, and I just wondered, you're dead tired, you're exhausted, you just got gashed, and I understand the pride thing. I didn't see a ton of that from the defense today, and I know Carolina has a lot to do with it. One of the things that we have to be careful to avoid on shows like this when we break these down, there is another team at play here, and that team got worked last week by New England. They were much better in the return game today. They ran the ball so much better. They were gashed by the Patriots. Drake May lit them up, and so they fall behind 17-zip at home. I want to make sure that at some point during the show, I at least say credit to Carolina. It's not all Miami stinking up the joint. The Panthers really turned it on too.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Like I said, early on, we couldn't run the ball inside, and we were still up 17, or going to be up 17 points at one point. We still couldn't run the ball. So that, they hunkered down in the middle and, and with the linebackers and even the outside guys and stopped our running game, and made us one-dimensional. And then it was easy to pick us apart.
Kyle, your thoughts on that, on the Panthers turning it on, a lot of pride, and they played really well. But I thought the interior, to Z's point, of the Panthers defense just set the tone for this game, and they stuck with it. And credit to their coaching staff and their players for not panicking. They stuck with the game plan. They kept running the ball. It kept working. But I truly thought it started in the interior of the defensive line and then the offensive line for Carolina, because the turnovers are what killed them early, not the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it was the big matchup coming into the game that I think you knew was in Carolina's advantage, was those defensive tackles. And Derek Brown, I said it in the group chat that we had as this game was playing out, is a sensational football player.
Man, he's
and
great.
The ability to impact the game in all phases and play at a high volume is Christian Wilkins-esque, but in a bigger package. And it's a really impressive combination of traits for him. And he had a large gravitational pull along the line of scrimmage. And unfortunately, for Miami, it was they didn't have an answer. And then structurally, it felt like they were outnumbered at the point of attack with the swiftness in which the guys were getting down and fitting the D gap outside when they were trying to run outside. So really bad combination of traits. I think you can look at on both sides of the ball. I know that the first two players that I will be looking at are the top two draft choices that this team made in April, with Jonas Savaitanaya at left guard. And he obviously had the sack that was given up to Tua Tagovailoa on the opening possession when the Dolphins were forced to kick a field goal. And then Kenneth Grant, who we're kind of waiting to see the light bulb come on. And is Chop Robinson last year, and I thought Chop played his most impactful game for the Dolphins. I thought the penalty on him was absolute weak sauce, in my opinion. A hip drop call from when he's behind him is that doesn't add up to me, but it's neither here nor there. I don't think that's what cost you the game or anything like that. But it was nice to see Chop make some plays. But as I reflect on what his journey was, it took probably till about week 8, week 9, where you felt like the light bulb came on for him, and unfortunately for Miami, we can't afford to wait for week 9 for the light bulb to come on for Kenneth Grant. And that's assuming that the light bulb is going to come on in week 9 for Kenneth Grant. So those two players for me have a lot of weight, as the saying goes, heavy is the crown, right? They're kind of the marquee players of a draft class in which the Dolphins leaned full on into the youth. And I said, and I know I'm on my soapbox right now, I apologize, but I'm a little fired up. I said this offseason was about two things for me. It was about coaching and player development, because you didn't have the talent advantages that you've had in past years with past rosters. You didn't spend a bunch in free agency. You kind of went back to a couple of guys that had been journeymen and had chips on their shoulders, and you went a lot younger, and you went from an older roster in football to one of the youngest rosters in football. And I look at a loss like this, and whether it's the game management decisions or the young players who have been thrust into high volume starting roles and how they handled those assignments in that game. If you're going to define this season, not necessarily by wins and losses, but by coaching and player development, I think this week goes in a loss in all of those phases off of the early impressions on the tape.
What's your response to that, Z?
Oh, no, I agree with Kyle all the way. At some point, these players got to take responsibility. I get it. You can throw the coach under the bus all you want, but the coach is not out there between the white lines. It's the player. We're making dumb mistakes. The secondary grabbing too much. At some point, you can't do that. They're watching it. Like I said, the beginning of the season, it's like we talked about earlier, a couple of shows ago, the early of the season, those little ticky-tack calls are going to be called all the time, because these refs are trying to build up their stature for later on in the year, and they do it in the beginning of the year. So you can't just go out there and grab all the time. That's not proper technique. You might have got away with it on the scout team or in training camp, but it's time to play big ball. And you got to go out there and play great technique, and you got to do it consistently. And until that happens, it's going to be a long road for us.
Yeah, and Tyreek Hill's first game out. We're going to pick that up on the other side. Comeback opportunity. Obviously would have helped to have him. Is Waddle a number 1? We keep talking about that, and maybe we should be talking about, is anybody on the team a number 2 or a number 3? We should maybe have that conversation on the other side. This is Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, 1:59, 3 timeouts. They had just scored and went right down the field. You're feeling actually pretty good. You're like, all right, fine, get the defense off the field. Gave it up again. Last team with the ball is going to win this game. Here comes no. So we're going to pick that up on the other side. It's Z, it's Kyle, it's Grease. It's the Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, right after I get a chance to tell you about another one of our awesome sponsors. And of course, that right there would be, there we go, Mazda. Today's show brought to you by Mazda. Moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is... Well, they were up 17-0, and they did take the lead in the fourth quarter. So I'll say Tua's late touchdown pass to Jaylen Waddle, a 46-yard bomb. You're feeling great, and you're feeling like you might get out of there with a win. But no, it wasn't to be. But that was a beautiful drive where they kind of rediscovered their offense, and you thought it was going to continue, but it didn't. So there you have it. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. On the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we left the 3-shot up there. It stuck on me a little bit, but I want everybody to understand something here, guys. It's really easy to get on these shows and just whine and complain, and it's very easy to do that. But I give Z and Kyle a lot of credit for breaking it down for you the way they are here on this show, because so many people just want to go fire McDaniel. Don't let him on the plane. Tua stinks. They don't have this. They don't have that. But we talked about the trenches, and Z, I want to start with you on this one. We talked about the trenches, right? And in those trenches, obviously Miami got worked, and there was a lot of pressure on Tua. But I want to ask you how much you think they missed Tyreek Hill today. I know they missed him. I know it's obvious you don't just not miss a guy like that. And then the second part of that is what I said going into the break. Is there a number 2 on this team, or even a number 3 to help Jaylen Waddle, and especially when they're not throwing Waller or even targeting him in the second half?
Well, we'll start there first. I mean, the number 2 is Waller. I mean, he proved it again. His limited targets this week, he makes plays. He stretches the field. He's a big target in the middle. You know, he's got to keep building up his reps and get out of this pitch count and be a full-time player for us to have any success on offense. Because, again, now you're going to have teams, they're going to have to game plan like they did Tyreek with Waller. So now these backers can't be, in the box all the time, stopping the run either. They're going to have to be worried about the play action for Waller coming across the middle. So they're not going to be running up and filling gaps. When he's not in there, they don't respect the other tight ends right now. So they're not even looking for the pass at all. They're just playing the run, and that's probably one of the reasons why our run game was garbage today, because they didn't really, care, so they didn't play it.
Yeah, and the openings were down the field, Kyle. Like you said, that 12 to 17-yard range and deeper, and we saw that on that last touchdown drive by Miami. Panthers made a choice clearly in the second quarter on defense that they were not going to get beat by the run. They made that choice coming into the game, but they clearly made the choice mid-second quarter. Said, we're not getting beat by this short passing game. So they literally did everything to stop the run and that short passing game. It went nowhere from that point forward, forcing Miami to move the ball down the field, which they couldn't do, but then they did in that one drive. So I'm going to ask you the same question, man. Without Tyreek Hill, what do they need to do with this receiving core? I think what we saw today is that they don't have a number 2 or even maybe a 3. Do you agree with that? And do you think they need to go shopping?
I don't think anybody's going to give anybody the green light to go shopping and spend future assets for a 1-4 team in which the general manager and the head coach are on the hot seat. I think there's a checks and balances system that exists in Miami with Brandon Shore also having some influence in football operations and the salary cap management. And as compared to Chris Greer or Mike McDaniel saying, we need this, we're on the hot seat, let's trade this and go get this guy. I'd be stunned. I don't think you can justify it with where this team is at. They need to continue to draft more players and draft by volume and build a program. That was what this whole build was supposed to be about. And they kind of got eyes for shiny objects in Tyreek Hills and Bradley Chubbs and Sean Paytons and Tom Brady's, and lose first and third round draft picks for those without even getting them on the roster. Right.
Great point.
I think Malik Washington could be a really compelling player if he's not getting all of his targets 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. There's Tua Tagovailoa is super complimentary of Malik Washington and his football intelligence and his football IQ and his feel, and his targets are a perimeter screen, and you go no huddle at the end of the first quarter to run a jet touch pass in the low red zone. And that's another thing that kind of drives me nuts about that, between the screen pass that I think Achane dropped and then the jet touch pass at the end of the first quarter. They get into the red zone sometimes, and that's where Tua, you feel like accuracy and anticipation can really help you win in tight spaces because, everything happens faster in the red zone. And instead you go for these like low error, low yield schemed touches to just try to get a ball into a guy's hands behind the line of scrimmage. And then lo and behold, you get the third down and goal, and you have Achane get matched up on a non-corner out on the sideline, and he elevates and makes the play and scores a touchdown on a perfectly thrown ball. So I didn't come out of this game thinking like, wow, they really missed Tyreek Hill. Now, would Tyreek Hill have made everybody's life a little easier? Yes. But what does the distribution of targets look like? I mean, Waddle had 9, had 6 for 110 and a touchdown. Waller caught all 5 of his targets for 78 yards and a touchdown. Achane's getting all his targets just like Malik Washington at or behind the line of scrimmage, unless he's catching a 10-yard touchdown in the red zone and on the sideline. Malik Washington caught 4 balls today for 0 yards. 4 balls for 0 yards because everything is just scheme touches behind the line of scrimmage. I actually thought Julian Hill stepped up with a couple of touchdowns. Tanner Connor had 2 for 16. So your non-Darren Waller tight ends caught 6 passes for 38 yards in this game. I think you can live with that.
That's not bad.
It's when you go 14 for 19 on the ground, like it's just an untenable situation. It is what it is.
Yeah, and of course the penalties. Jack Jones had one that gave Carolina the win late in the game, and they moved the ball right down the field. They picked up the 4th and 5, but offense, again, 1:59 left. You have the ball, 3 timeouts. That's on the offense. The defense at that point had done all they could do. The Panthers retook the lead. The offense has to step up there. The money's being spent on offense. I mean, Jaylen Waddle had a huge game today. I mean, you just said his numbers. He was great today. Waller was amazing, especially in the first half, but in the second, they didn't really go to him. So, Kyle, I'm going to ask you point blank, and I'm going to put Z on the spot right after that, but I'm going to ask you, start with you, Kyle. It sounds to me like you think they have the players to be much better than they are. So do you think the players are representative? The talent on this team is representative of their record of 1-4, and it's more coaching? Or do you think that the players are about the talent levels about what it is, and they're about where they should be with that?
I think they have a better talent level than 1-4, but they also have an incomplete roster, and there's gaps in kind of where the timeline is for certain position rooms versus other position rooms. And that's where I think the conversation goes from allocating talent to, building a team and having chemistry and a cohesiveness in everything that you're doing to try to field the best roster. Cause everybody has talent, right? It's in the NFL, it's all about the margins and how many different margins of the game, whether that's time management or the middle 8 or your timeouts or 4-minute offense and how you control the clock in those situations. Like all those little things are the things that oftentimes add up to wins and losses in closely contested games. I think there's not a single phase of the roster where I look at it and say, I think they're really complete right now. So I think it's a combination of everything. And the fact that that's the case here in since 19, so year 6 of the build, really, and it really isn't the same build anymore. It's kind of a gap year and a transition into what the future looks like. I think you would just be hoping that a coaching staff that's had a lot of time on task with a lot of these guys and a head coach that's in year 4 would be pushing the right buttons to kind of pull the gaps of the roster together. So I don't think it's a single pronged answer, in my opinion.
No, and Z, we've talked about Chris Greer. He's been there a long time. Kyle correctly pointed out the tampering and the picks it cost them, but he has had plenty of picks in the early rounds to make something happen. Doesn't really have much to show for any of those picks. Last year, Tua gets hurt. You could blame that injury on the season getting derailed with the disgrace that they had in that quarterback room for backups. And in an NFL locker room to have those 2 guys as your backups, they addressed that this year, but shouldn't have had to address it after last year being so bad. So is this something where everybody in that locker room and everybody in that coach's room is going to turn around or could turn around and be justified and point straight up at the GM's office and say, come on, bro, help us here?
I mean, you could, but again, at the end of the day, you still have to look in the mirror and blame yourself. I don't care if you're a coach, a player, or the GM. At the end of the day, you have a job to do. And if you're not doing it to the fullest, I mean, you can't point a finger. And right now, I don't think anybody in that building can point a finger. Except the owner, like I always say.
Yeah.
But I think everybody is on, watch now. I mean, you have to do your job to the fullest. You can't do someone else's job. You got to do what you're asked to do, why you were hired. You have to do your job. Either you're a player or a coach or a GM or a scout or the janitor. I don't care. You have to do your job. And until you just do your job to the fullest, to your best ability, you're not going to win. And if it's not good enough, then the GM has to do his job and get someone else in there.
All right, great answer. So the players and the coaches don't have a right to point, Kyle, but the fans sure can, and we can on the shows like this. So I guess, are we pointing at Chris Greer? Is that what you were getting at?
Me?
No, Kyle. With that last point, were you kind of laying that at Chris Greer's feet a little bit?
Yeah, I think if you'd have asked me in January where I felt the change was most appropriate to be made, I probably would have said Chris then. And I think there's been a concentrated efforts, and Chris Greer said as much this offseason when he talked one of the 3 times he talks to the media, and he said we kind of felt like we weren't winning the right way and trying to change some of that this offseason. But when you have been in Chris's shoes for as long as he has, and you kind of set a plan, and then the plan gets thrown out the window because you go after big name with mature contracts, and it kind of accelerates your spending window and accelerates the age of your roster. And then you don't draft behind it, and you don't do anything to kind of restock that young talent. And you make a head coaching hire, but the head coach doesn't work out. So then you get a second head coaching hire to try to justify and quantify the quarterback. And then you give the quarterback the contract extension, and the quarterback in the second game after getting the $53 million contract extension goes down with another concussion, and it's a big concern and it's talking point moving forward. It's just been a lot that's built up over such a long amount of time that I think everybody with a set of eyeballs looks at it and says, hey, it's not really working right now. And when that's the case, I think the place that you have to start is the most constant variable out of all of it, which is at the top of football operations the last 6 years. And there's some things that Chris does that I like. And there's some elements of Chris that I think are weak spots, but it's so hard at this juncture, in my opinion, to look at the product on the field and isolate single variables to say, this is a problem and this is not. And when it gets that hard, in my opinion, that's when I think you probably just have to say, hey, maybe we need to take some bad medicine here, and we need to kind of get everybody in here that's working on this organization all at the same starting point, all moving in the same direction all at the same time. And that's the conversation that I think we need to continue to be increasingly prepared to have as this team now sits at 1-4 and hosts the Chargers next week.
Yeah, they're looking like 1-5 right there. You never know in the NFL, Z. But interestingly enough, I love your points, and I love the accountability. You can tell Z played so many years in the league and has coached for so long because you have incredible accountability, man. And I appreciate that about you, and I appreciate that about most players who I've covered. But I just wonder how these guys are going to pick it up, man. I mean, how do you have to have a short memory. I think that's one of the most underrated things in sports as a pro athlete. At times you need a really short memory, and everyone on this team needs to throw this game away and forget about it right now, because this thing could become hell on wheels in a blink of an eye.
Oh, without a doubt, because you did not stop the run this week. And what do the Chargers do? They love to run the ball.
Yeah.
So again, I've said it before, and I'll say it until the show ends. It's one play and clear. What happened just now is over. It's over. It's over. You can't change it. Now, again, tomorrow you got to go in and get ripped again, off the film. But then it's over. 24-hour rule. It's over. You got to keep going. We have a bunch of games left. It ain't like it's December. It's the start of October. We got a long road ahead. If we throw the towel in now and don't give a care, it's going to be a long, long year. Long, long year for us, for the team, for everybody involved in this, and nobody wants that. So again, as a player, you just got to know, you got to go back to work on Wednesday and figure it out and get a better showing on Sunday.
At some point, Z, and I'll wrap the segment with you on this. I know no player ever wants to hear this, and no coach ever wants to hear this. And we can pick it up on the other side with Kyle too. But at some point, Kyle mentioned it a couple of shows ago, empty seats, less jersey sales, fewer people watching and listening to the games. All those things add up to one thing, and that is a lot less money in the owner's pocket. And there's not an owner alive who likes that. that usually is what it takes to affect change. So just a quick thought from you along those lines, and not to say it would be better if that happened, but at some point, if this thing continues, it's got to be a complete overhaul. It's got to be.
True, Grease. You're right on all that. But as a player, for me, I never thought of that. I just thought about doing my job, and that was it. I can't worry about what the owner's going to do with the coaches, the players. Can't do that, because once you start thinking about it, you are not going to play good at all. You're not going to be worried about your task on hand, and that is winning the football game. So all the stuff off the field, upstairs, as a player, usually 98% of the guys don't even think about it.
All right. Well, the fans do, and all of us do, and it's an enviable position, really unenviable position for the players. No doubt about it. It's tough to be beaten like that, especially when you're on that defensive line and that offensive line, and you're just getting whipped all day long, and then everybody's talking about it. Shows like ours, the fans are all over you. It's a very tough situation. So one of the things I want to talk about on the other side is how you regroup as a player, how you keep that mind strong, because it's easy to sit here and say, hey, you need to be mentally tough and have a short memory. I want you on the other side, Z, to tell us how guys on this team are going to be able to do that, because to me, that's one of the toughest things in life, let alone football. It's the Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grease, Kyle, and Z. One more segment to go, those defensive penalties, and we look ahead to the Chargers. And the Chargers might not be as good as we thought they were to start the season, but they're still a pretty good football team coming in here next Sunday. We're going to take a quick break, and Kyle's going to tell you about FanDuel, and then when we come back, we will wrap up the show right here, Dolphin Squad on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
NFL season is in full swing, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because no matter how you choose to play, it makes your Sundays and your Saturdays and your Thursdays and your Mondays a little bit more interesting. It makes football more exciting when you have a little something on the line for yourself. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started with $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins.
On the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Z, I'll pick it right back up with you. How do you do that? I mean, how do you look? I mean, just you personally, right? You're a defensive lineman. This happened to a team, I'm sure, at some point that you played on. How does that process work? You take the plane ride home, and that's one of the worst, horrible plane ride, right? But take us through the process of moving on from a game like this and trying to get back to being your best as a player.
Well, it starts, with the veteran players, the leaders, on that defensive squad, whomever they are. They have to go out and they have to, start getting guys to make sure they know what they're doing. It's the younger players. You make sure, pull them aside, quiz them. Like I would quiz the younger guys all the time in the D-line room about sets, formations, our pressure packages, whatever it was. I just say to the backer, hey, what gap you have on this? The ball's going this way. What do you have? You just start quizzing those guys. Make sure they're, got their pre-snap reads down. And then when you go out to practice, you got to practice hard. You got to move around as a veteran player, as a leader, and show them the correct way how to do it. Now, sometimes you have veteran players that don't know how to do it the right way, and that's a problem. But I think there's probably enough on that team, with Anthony Weaver, who he has there, the older guys, they know how to practice right. And they have to go out and show everybody on the team how to practice right, and that's the only way it's going to get fixed.
Yeah, and as for the defensive penalties, I want to stick with you on this, that it's one thing to get beaten. It's one thing when you're physically overmatched. It's one thing when someone's a great player and they just make a great play. But to beat yourselves consistently the way the Dolphins did with the penalties today in particular, a few missed tackles for sure. When someone runs for 200 yards, there's a lot of those. So things like fundamentals, tackling, and, of course, those late penalties. And you just knew that that old 23 was getting picked on out there, and he did not step up at all with those penalties helping him out.
No, again, he's got to work his footwork, and you get your quick jam, and you got to let go. You got to move your feet. You can't be lazy. And a lot of those holding penalties by the DBs and the D linemen, it's laziness. Move your feet, shuffle, and let's get going.
Yeah, and Kyle, it wasn't just the defensive penalties. They had 2 illegal formations on kicks in this game. 2 on kicks. I mean, at some point, the lack of discipline and focus on both sides of the ball, because they were great. They had 1 penalty in the first half, but they completely lost focus. And it's not fair to just say the defensive penalties, because the offense had a couple of big ones too.
Well, and then you also had the holding penalty on Cole Strange on what would have been a chunk play and a potential drive starter, and put the Dolphins at 1st and 10 near midfield there in the midst of that scoring drought that they had. And it ended up walking you backwards and killed the drive. So you had drive killers on offense. You had field position stuff on defense or on special teams. And then you were extending drives on offense. And while we're talking corners, one of the things that I had down on my notes, we talked a lot about Jack Jones and the defensive penalties, but how about the times where Rasul Douglas is holding the flat in kind of clouded corner where he's up and you got corner routes running behind him? It happened twice for like chunk explosive plays in the passing game. There's nobody in the flat. And, you know, it's you had felt the last 2 weeks with Buffalo and against the Jets, hey, you kind of felt like the corners were making some progress. I think all that progress, unfortunately, in this game, I didn't feel like was followed through. And it just compounded your issues where, you know, it's one thing if you can't fit the run and guys aren't feeling blocks and getting off blocks or making tackles through contact and all that kind of stuff. But then you start having lapses of leverage, and you have lapses in technique. To Z's point, like, that's just another thing that you can look at for the margins, right? Like, everybody's athletic running around out there, but you have to be on top of all of the details, and holding the flat with nobody there and giving up corner routes for 24 yards and, you know, getting a holding penalty and not getting your head back and looking and being too engaged down the field. Like, it is just another rock on the pile for the ways in which this game really snowballed on you in a bad way.
As a leader, Tua Tagovailoa said after the game, and someone in the chat wrote this, so thank you for throwing it up there, because we don't get the chance to watch that doing the show live, but he said that the offense just, and I'm paraphrasing, just wasn't executing. It wasn't in sync. It wasn't working right today. And, you know, it did early on, and it did on that one late drive, but Z, I'm going to read you 2 sets of numbers. 1 quarterback won the game, 1 quarterback lost. I'm not going to tell you who's who. You're going to know. But one was 19 of 30 for 198, 2 touchdowns and a pick. The other one was 27 of 36 for 256, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Okay? And the guy with the better numbers lost the game. All right? So everybody who's ripping on Tua, I'm not going to sit here and defend him. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, leave him alone. He's the quarterback. He's the leader. It goes with the position without a doubt. But man, when you have your leading rusher has 16 yards on 10 carries, and you have 14 for 19 as a team, while the other team has 32 for 239, they have a 53-yard run and a 200-yard rusher. You're looking in the wrong direction when you're blaming Tua. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. You are absolutely – did he rush a couple throws and miss a couple guys? Yeah. Did he get sacked 3 times? Did he get hit 100 times? Yeah, he had people in his face the whole game. So how much of it is fair to put on Tua, given everything I just said about him being the leader, signing up for it, but also he balled out for a lot of this game.
You're talking about numbers now.
Yeah.
I don't believe in numbers. It's
okay.
W and an L, right? He touches the ball every play on offense. It is up to him to score points. It's up to him to lead that team. It's up to him to get the guys in the huddle and get everybody on the same page. All right. I'm not blaming everything on him, but at the end of the day, he's the quarterback of the team. That's why he's getting paid $53 million. All right. Yes, numbers are great, but that means nothing by the end of the year. If you don't get into the playoffs and you don't make a run to the Super Bowl, he will never be known as a good quarterback. So for him, he needs 10 other people on that offense to be on the same page as him. So he has to be the leader. He has to be the vocal guy.
Kyle, with all the quarterbacks we've seen come in here since Dan Marino, yep. I know Tua's toward the top of that list more so than he is toward the bottom. It gets dangerous when you keep blowing things up and firing coaches and bringing in new QBs over and over again. But I don't know, just in response to what Z said, what are your thoughts on Tua? And I know they had the lulls there and they had the 4 drives where they couldn't get anything going. But how much do you put on him, and how much do you think that that the players still believe in him?
Well, I think this is – I alluded to this earlier, but I think it gets very difficult to isolate single variables. But when I watch the tape and when I've watched the tape when the Dolphins offense has struggled, and I already saw a quote from Tua talk about, in the second half they adjusted, they put more bodies in the middle of the field, and they played their linebackers with a lot of depth to take away our intermediate throws. That's been the book that every team has had that's given the Dolphins problems defensively for like 2.5 years now. Like, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. Learn how to run the ball, right? And that's not on Tua, but you have to be able to access the other areas of the field other than just the check down in the flat late that a guy has to make a missed tackle happen in the flat to gain more than 3 yards. So do I think there's issues with the Dolphins offensive line that compound those variables? Yes. But if teams are just going to consistently, we're going to play the second level at 9 yards of depth, or we're going to put extra bodies in between the hashes and force you to throw outside the numbers, you have to throw outside the numbers. And that's the part for Tua that I don't think has consistently been a club in the bag that you need to have. So I do take some of this and say, okay, well, the Panthers did everything that every team that's ever given you problems for 2.5 years has done. Why don't you do something different about it?
Yeah.
And that's the part of it where I do think part of that is his cast. Part of that is the play calling, but part of that is Tua, in my opinion, because of the things that he does well and the things that he doesn't. So you have to figure out what buttons you have to push to get teams to stop doing the thing that takes away what you do best. And this was yet another example of them not having the buttons to push, whether it comes from the coach, the play design, the offensive line, the quarterback himself. I think there's blame to be had in all of it. And that's where, again, I think it's very difficult to look at the product that's on the field right now and isolate singular problems and solutions without making assumptions.
And Z, I'm wondering, and I want you to, be as truthful as you can here, because you're great at this, but I want to ask you, if you're in that locker room and you're a defensive lineman on this team, I know you're worried about yourself, and you're saying you don't point fingers, but are you losing faith in Tua, and are you losing faith in Mike McDaniel?
It's hard. It's hard not to, but no, I wouldn't be, because again, I'm just worried about the defense. I'm a defensive player. And what we put on the field today, I can't be mad at anybody on the offense or the head coach, because we did not stop the run. We did not get after this little passer. We made him look like a football player, and we going into the game, I'm sure guys were like licking their chops to get after this dude in this old line, and we didn't sniff it at all. We got 2 sacks today, I think. Right? Mm-hmm. That's, they got 3. You got more than their whole season, so that as a defensive player, I'm mad. I'm not saying it's the head coach, it's the quarterback, it's the O-line. Until I fix my side of the ball, I cannot say anything about the offense.
And Kyle, and I'll come back to you, Z, on this too, to wrap it up. Chargers, Jim Harbaugh coming in. They're not playing this week. He's coming in with all that time to prepare, and the type of coach he is. Obviously, they're fundamentally sound, but he's a tough dude. He's going to love to run the football. When he looks at this tape, what the Chargers are going to be doing, and Miami better be ready for it. So this is a tough one. I'm wondering how you feel about that Chargers game right now.
I look at a team that likes to play physical, and I know they're down some starting offensive linemen, both tackles, and Mekhi Becton's in, I believe, concussion protocol right now. But they're a team that has the ability to play very physical, and the Dolphins are not. And I think that's not a matchup that I feel particularly good about. I think the thing that you have working best for you is the fact that you're at home for a West Coast team coming east to play at 1:00, and the body clock differences that come out of that. But I'm not going to get up there and see a lot of matchups from personnel standpoints that I feel really excited about. And if the Chargers are going to do the same thing that the Panthers and the Colts and the Patriots and going back to last year, the Jets and everybody's done, where they're just going to clog the middle of the field and say, hey, you're going to have to beat us another way. Until they show me that they have the ability to conduct a different answer with consistency, I don't think they're going to do it. And that's the unfortunate part of it, of being on the outside looking in, is I know the conversations internally is everybody's looking at themselves and trying to say, how do I do my job better? But whether or not they actually do their job better or not right now, I think there's not a lot of confidence in my eyes that this is going to swing around in a timely fashion.
We'll have a lot more on this on Wednesday in our midweek edition, Z, but what are your thoughts as of right now on that Chargers game?
Yeah, we're just going to have to play physical for once, because Jim is going to come in and try to run the ball down our throats, and defensively they're going to come after us. They got some DBs that love to hit and come out of the secondary, and they will, like Derwin is going to try to take your head off. So we got to get ready to have a physical game, down in Miami, and hope that the heat zaps them a little bit.
And that game will be early on Sunday. So like Kyle said, that hurts a West Coast team a little bit. But again, they've had plenty of time to get ready for this one. Well, guys, another one in the books, a good show today. Unfortunately, they didn't get the W. Had they just scored on that last drive, it would have been a completely different show. Everybody feeling completely different right now because a win in the National Football League, like you said, Z, on Wednesday, very hard to come by. And it would have been one that they stole late after giving it away, and they just weren't able to do it. And it's devastating at this point in the season. The difference between 1-4 and 2-3 for this team is just monumental at this point. But make sure you keep it here all week long with Kyle Krabs. Got the best coverage in the business. It's going to be a group therapy this week, unfortunately, and it's not going to be a fun one, but there's going to be a lot of things that he has coming your way this week. Kyle, you want to just give him a quick highlight before we bust on out of here, what you have coming up?
Yeah, I'll do a group therapy for the Monday show a little later this afternoon. And then Tuesday will kind of be the final thoughts on the tape. Wednesday is whatever news we get through the early portions of the week. Thursday will be a crossover with Locked On Chargers. We, of course, have our own squad show in the middle of the week as well. And then Friday will be looking at the personnel questions and what a road to a win could look like if you're able to put it together. So we got our work cut out for us in that regard this week, but the good news is that show's not till Friday, so we get a little time to figure it out.
Yeah, just like the Dolphins do, but not a ton. So I do have faith a little bit. I'm being called a homer in the chat, and that's interesting because I've never been called a homer by anybody in my life. And these are fans who are used to, God rest his soul, the Mad Dog and guys like Joe Rose, and they're calling me a homer. I love that. But, man, I'm just trying to keep it real with you guys, and I hope you appreciate the knowledge that Z and Kyle bring to the table here on the show as much as I do. This has been your Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, season approaching, panic mode. We'll be back here on Wednesday with another episode. Stick with Kyle all week, like we said, and we will talk to you midweek with another edition of your Dolphin Squad show. Till then, Miami, try to stay sane. I'm not even going to drop my normal tagline because right now you just need to stay out of as much as you can your own heads. Until Wednesday, we'll see you then. Thank you for being here with Dolphin Squad show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.